When it comes to using RAID on your system, you've got a choice. You can either do software RAID or hardware RAID. When you're doing software RAID, you're letting Windows do all the work for you. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it takes a lot of overhead onto Windows to do that RAID for you. If you want really great RAID and you want all the fun features, the thing to use is hardware RAID. Pretty much any typical higher-end desktop motherboard has hardware RAID built into it. You just pick a certain number of your regular SATA connectors and you reconfigure the system to do RAID. The downside to this is that the vast majority of motherboards are either all RAID or all just what we call JBOD, just a bunch of disks. In other words, let's say you plug a system into here and you format that hard drive and you make it perfect, nice Windows setup, you're ready to go. And you decide, ooh, I'd like to do RAID 5. Well, you really can't. What will end up happening is you're going to have to take that extra drive, you plug 2 more drives in, and then you have to reinstall Windows, because the moment you go from AHCI to RAID, all of the controllers are immediately RAID controllers. There's some exceptions to that. There are some motherboards where it keeps like 2 connectors that are just for regular hard drives and then it has RAID connectors. But on most of the most of the motherboards you see today, what you're going to be seeing is a setup where either it's all going to be RAID or it's not. A far better option is something like this over here. So what I've got here in my hand is a dedicated RAID controller. Now if you take a look, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 SATA connections on here. And I just plug regular SATA drives in, and whatever gets plugged into this controller is going to become my RAID array. I like these because it gives me a little bit more control. It has a little bit better of a feature set, and in general, it works better overall. A lot of times if I have RAID, I've already got a system established that's working beautifully, and I don't want to mess with the drives I have in the system. I want to add an entire RAID array. So what I'm going to do is plug this guy in, and I want to show you what happens during the boot. It's actually kind of cool. Okay, so what I've done here is I've gone into the configuration utility for my hardware RAID controller. This comes on the controller. It's like a system setup. During the post, it actually said press Control F, and that is how I got into the screen. So it's like its own little system setup, but just for the RAID array itself. And so that's the important thing we have to understand. Just because we've plugged some drives into a controller, we have to define an array. So press F1, you can see I've got 2 hard drives installed on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array. So if you go through here, you'll see you can do RAID 5, JBOD, which just means just a bunch of disks. In other words, it's telling the RAID controller to forget RAID, just be 2 hard drives. I can do RAID 0, I can do RAID 1, I can do RAID 10, and I can do RAID 5. So for simplicity's sake, let's just do a quick stripe, RAID 0. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to select the drives. I've only got 2, I need at least 2 to do it, so this is pretty straightforward. I hit Control Y, and I'm going to go ahead and save that right now. The nice part about hardware RAID is that the RAID array, the complete RAID array, just manifests as a simple hard drive to Windows. So when I go into disk management, it just looks like one hard drive. And I can create simple volumes, whatever I want to do, and then the RAID array works. Now the thing you have to understand, if you're using hardware RAID, you have some really cool opportunities. For example, if you want to spend enough money, you can set up an extra system that's got 7 or 8 hard drives in it, set up some big hairy RAID 5 volume, and if one of the drives goes bad, you can literally pull the drive out and shove it back in without rebooting anything. It's pretty impressive. We call that hot swappable. It could do other stuff on top of that. You can keep what's known as a hot spare. So it's, let's say I have 4 hard drives. 3 of them are a RAID 5 array, and the 4th one is just sitting there in case one of the other 3 fail. And it will automatically just start, if it catches one of the drives goes bad, it simply goes to that hot spare and begins rebuilding that as the spare drive, and all you get is a text message or an email telling you that it's taking care of this stuff. RAID is a powerful tool. If you have a choice between hardware and software RAID, always use hardware RAID. It gives you a lot of extra feature sets that Windows simply can't provide through software. of the two ways to do RAID, one is software, and that's the one I want to do right now. So what I've got is a Windows 7 system up, and I've got 3 hard drives in it. One is booting Windows. It's got a full-blown Windows 7 installation on it. And then I have 2 more blank drives. So let's go ahead and take a look at this, and let's do a little RAID. All right, so here I am in disk management, and you'll notice that I've got 2 completely blank drives right now. So I'm going to make them both dynamic. So anytime you start working with software RAID, you always make your disk dynamic. So I've got 2 completely blank drives. Now, if I have 2 drives, I can do RAID 0 striping, and I can do RAID 1 mirroring. RAID 5 requires 3 drives, but to be honest with you, it all works pretty much the same way. So I'm just going to do striping and mirroring. So let's go ahead and get started. So to stripe or mirror, what we have to do is you have to have blank drives to do this. So to stripe, all I have to do is select a striped volume. A little wizard comes up and it says, okay, you were on disk 0. What's the other drive you want me to use? So I'm going to select disk 1. I'm going to add it. I'm going to hit next. I'm not going to assign it a drive letter, and I'm not going to format it. And I give it just a second, and it's going to go ahead and now create a striped volume. So in essence, I've taken 2 3 terabyte drives, and I now have a single volume that's massive, that's on the area of around almost 6 terabyte drives. So this is a very, very big stripe. Now the thing you got to remember about stripes is that I've got 2 drives that are striping. Stripes make things faster. So if I lose either drive, I got a problem. But I could give it 1 big drive letter. Everything works fantastic. No problems whatsoever. Okay, so striping's fun, but let me go ahead and delete all this. And what I want to do next is create a mirror. Now before I make a mirror though, let me show you something. Do you see here where it says new spanned volume? A spanned volume is not like a RAID volume at all. In a RAID volume, you have 2 drives that are working together. In a spanned volume, what happens is you have 2 volumes, one gets filled up, and then once this is filled up, it just keeps going on to the next guy. So you get neither speed nor data safety with spanned volumes. We do spanned volumes because we've got a hard drive that's run out of space and we're lazy. We just want to plug another hard drive in and keep going. Okay, back to it. So let's now take a look at a mirrored volume. So notice I was already on drive 0. So it says next. It says, okay, you had selected drive 0. What's the other drive you want to use? Hit add. Now, I'm not going to give this a drive letter. I'm not going to format it. Warning, warning. We let it do its thing here. See how fast it is? Okay, fantastic. So now what's happened is I've created a single drive that is a mirrored volume. And if you look up here, you'll see that the mirrored volume is half the size of the total thing. It's the size of 1 drive. And that makes sense because basically they are copies of each other. So the one nice thing about mirrors, oh, now take a look here. First of all, we can remove the mirror, which means basically get rid of the whole thing, or we can break a mirrored volume. Let's say one of these 2 drives goes bad. I can come in here, break the mirror, and then I can just treat one of these drives as a regular hard drive. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I just want to wipe the whole thing. So we're going to delete it all, and it'll all go back to a nice black nothing. Okay. Here's the one cool part about mirroring that you can't do with striping. Now you look down here on my C drive. If I want to, I can add a mirror to an existing drive. So I just pick a particular drive. Oh, I'd never set him to dynamic, so I'll let him take care of that in a minute. And it's going to take it a little bit, but it's going to go ahead and turn this drive up here into a mirror of this drive. Windows has pretty good software RAID, and it's nice. I think one of the cool parts is that I can actually go into disk management and actually enact RAID 0, RAID 1, or RAID 5. It's kind of cool to watch it work this way. The only downside to software-based RAID is that it puts a lot of work on Windows. Keep in mind, we have no special controller here or anything. These are just regular drives that Windows turns into RAID drives in order to take advantage of striping, mirroring, or RAID 5.